So we should see, actually, it looks like when I started the webinar, it also started the recording. And attendees are being admitted. So hopefully we'll be able to kick off the webinar right at the bottom of the hour as we scheduled. We'll kick off here in a couple of minutes. Okay, we've still got some folks joining. We'll give it another minute. Okay, it's 1:31. I'm sure a few additional folks will be popping in as we kick things off, but I think it's time to get started. First, let me just say good afternoon to everyone and thank you for your attendance today. I want to welcome you to Assurity's webinar on seamless acceptance, problems and solutions. I'm Rex Bull, Assurity's CMO and your moderator for today's webinar. I'll be monitoring chat and Q&A. If you have a question for me, a problem, a situation, please send me a chat message. If you have a question for any of the panelists, please submit them in the Q&A. And we will hopefully get an opportunity to present that question to the panel during the time in which you ask it, where it'll most likely be most relevant. So we're going to see how that goes to hopefully incent more interactive conversation and discussion within the webinar by allowing those questions to come in during the presentation rather than holding them to the end. If it gets a little unwieldy, I'll have to come in and move us along so that we can finish on time. I think you will appreciate the panel that we have set up for you today. We have Sharick Mirza, CEO and founder of Assurety Consulting and Solutions. Assurety has provided expertise to the postal system for over 17 years. As part of that focus, we've also worked with many commercial mailers, such as many of you. We have Fedor with us as well. He has many years of experience in the commercial mailing industry, and Bernie will guide us through the PowerPoint presentation that we have structured to facilitate this discussion today as well. We also have Leanne Herman. She has worked the majority of her career in the mailing industry, and she is currently co-chair of the MTAC user group for informed delivery and represents the industry perspective. In addition, we have Kurt Ruppel. Kurt brings extensive experience with postal acceptance and verification processes and serves as the focus leader of marketing mail letters for MTAC. And last but not least, we have Joe Bailey. Joe recently joined Assurety as VP of Business Development. And Joe comes to Assurety with over 36 years of experience in the mailing industry as well. So I think you would agree that we have a great panel for today's discussion. Their insights into the challenges and solutions of seamless are an important story that I think you will want to hear. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bernie, who will kick this off for us.
All right, thanks, Rex. So today we're going to talk about, what we know now, what's new with Seamless, what are the benefits, what are the challenges, and what are the solutions to navigating through the Seamless world. And then we'll finish up with a brief discussion with the panelists and find out if there's any questions and see if we can answer those for you today. So let's just jump in on what we know now. So today we know that if you have a DMU, you have to go, if you're in Seamless Parallel right now, you have to go full Seamless acceptance by May 1st of next year. If you enter mail at a BMEU, you have till July 1st of next year. And I guess the most important part here is that they're proposing an incentive program that's going to begin in January. Now that's pending PRC approval. That is for 0.001 cents per piece, which comes out to $1,000. Now, in order to qualify for that, you have to be Seamless active. You cannot be in parallel. Parallel is not eligible for that incentive. And if you want to know more about that, on Postal Pro, they just published a FAQ for that. I think they posted it either yesterday or today. So you can go there for more information. So let's just jump to what are the benefits of Seamless acceptance. Well, the first one is you get to run in parallel. You don't have to just jump into it. And by running in parallel, you can work out all the kinks, you can work out all the difficulties, you can develop a QC procedure, you can develop programs around this, and you have until May of next year to do so. And that really makes sure that you have your process under control before you go live. Now, what other benefits are there? Well, you have longer production cycles. You no longer need to be tied to having a DMU in the building. And everything now is going to be checked by electronic verification, and you have more control over your postage processing, and you have improved feedback. You have real-time feedback of how you're doing with the scorecard. So if you know you have a process that may not be working, you get feedback right away on your scorecard and let you correct that and change your QC procedures to make more efficient and quality mailing. So I think at this point, I'd like to see if what Leanne, do you have any comments on what you see as benefits to Seamless?
Absolutely. I think one of the primary benefits that seamless acceptance mailers derive is, as you noted, the ability to enter mail for our client base and our mail owners, basically 24/7, 365 days a year. The ability to avoid verification and slowdowns that happen with verification. It's nothing with the USPS, but sometimes there's time that if you have a DMU, a detached mail unit on site, you might have to wait for the clerk to come back. Or if you enter BMEU, you've got travel time to get there in some cases. One real nice thing about Seamless is, of course, you need to have something called e-induction to do it. But if you have drop shipment pallets in the world of Seamless and you have a logistics carrier coming to get them, if you're a BMEU plant, you don't have to drive them to the BMEU and bring them back. So that's a big savings in cost and time and labor. So I think those are real big benefits.
That's good.
Excellent.
So Kurt, do you have any other insights to the benefits?
I would just highlight the parallel option with Seamless, that everybody starts in parallel. You're having your mail verified the way it always has been, but at the same time, you're seeing all the data regarding how you're meeting various quality thresholds. And the Postal Service is very careful about not putting people into live Seamless until they've gone through parallel and Postal Service is sure that your process is under control. So that needs to be a good back and forth between mailer and the Postal Service, just to make sure everything's lined up. And that is what the Postal Service is really focused on. And the other thing was just the postage processing costs, that as we move into seamless acceptance, Postal Service is doing much more with passive scans, with data, and less with having to have actual people on site at mail producing plants or at BMEUs who are physically verifying mail. So that's a cost savings for the Postal Service, and that should drive better control of postage pricing go forward.
And Kurt and Leanne, do you see benefits for your customers, the mail owners?
Absolutely. They have visibility if they choose to execute it into how we're performing as a mail service provider. Sometimes clients have very, very tight service level agreements and they need things done very quickly and they can't wait maybe even a couple hours, or definitely not a day or two. So I absolutely think there's a benefit to the mail owner in what the MSP goes through to become seamless, proof for seamless acceptance. Yes, definitely a benefit. They benefit as well.
Yeah, the clients or mail owners are going to benefit from, better control over postage prices, and there's more transparency, as Leanne was saying, that you're going to have visibility into how your service provider is performing, and therefore you better idea of how your mail is going to be performing.
All right. Well, now that we've talked about the benefits, let's talk about the challenges. And before we talk about challenges, we should say that the benefits greatly outweigh the challenges. But so one of the major challenges is that people are nervous from going from parallel to active because it's, obviously it's the unknown, it's the new process. Everyone's kind of afraid to go to something new. And Leanne just touched on the visibility of the mail owners. So if the mail owners have access to the scorecard, now as a mail service provider, you have to make sure your scorecard is relatively clean, because now you're exposed to the world. You have to make sure that that you're doing what you're supposed to do. And that may involve crafting some QC procedures or maybe developing some programs in-house to assure that you are error-free. You do have the ability to track your results, and if they're negative, then you have to go in and make some changes to your process. So this is an evolving process, and it involves some change to the way we've been doing things. Also, one of the fears would be assessments. If something happens and you're unfortunately guilty of that, there's a penalty, there's an assessment. And that assessment process happens over a couple of months, but still there's that threat of perhaps owing money to the Postal Service. So by going through this, we see that you may need some resources, whether that is individuals or programs, to make sure that your scorecard is clean. And those resources may be different from a small mailer to a mid-sized mailer to a larger mailer. So knowing all these challenges, Kurt, what would you say, is a major challenge for you?
You really need to be sure that if you're a mail service provider, that you're bringing your clients, the mail owners, along with you for this journey. As we have been talking about, they will have visibility to their own mailer scorecard. They'll see how you're performing as a service provider. So if you talk to your clients, let them know the process you're going through as it's discovery for you and the Postal Service. Okay, where is my data good? Where maybe isn't it as good as it should be? How do I improve my process? If your client knows you're going down that path, you're improving, you're doing continuous improvement, then they'll better understand what they're seeing on their scorecard, and it won't be as much of a challenge to communicate to them that you're making the mail acceptance process better and the mail production process better.
What's the one thing, I guess, Leanne, that you would still remember through your process that still gives you goosebumps as far as any of these challenges are concerned? Because most of them are people related. You have any stories to share?
Well, I think for me, looking at this and having lived through it, I think one of the most interesting things about the evolution of the mailing industry in general, as Rex said, I've been doing this a long time, over 20, we're going on 25 years now. So, when we first started out in the world of letters and flats, and then there was a Postnet barcode, and that was a big deal, and then became an IMB. But now, as we evolve, it really is, to me, the printed piece is important. Getting the right message to the right recipient at the right time is very, very important. Color match is important. I mean, all that process is important. But however, in my thought process on this is today's environment is much more about an information exchange and a data exchange between the mail service providers and the United States Postal Service to build this intelligent network based on barcodes on pieces, letters, sacks, containers. So I do think on the fifth challenge there about how, needing a resource of folks who maybe have a different level of IT or technical ability than maybe I would have ever thought about, or definitely than I ever would have thought about 24 years ago. I think that can be challenging to understand the intricacies of the data exchange that's required to take advantage of all of these wonderful programs.
Leanne, I think I agree with you on that. It's all going to be data driven, and data is going to be very important.
One of the things I heard, I know at NAPM and other places, is needing different type of resources who are now, instead of managing the floor physical process, are managing your process through data. And so you need to be able to train people who can understand and work with data and see your business through the eyes of data.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bernie.
Okay, so we talked about the benefits, we talked about the challenges, and we believe in talking to our customers that there's three pillars of success for seamless acceptance. And in order to have these three pillars, you need software tools. So we think that it's preparation, validation, and reconciliation. That your data has to be prepared correctly. You need to validate that it is correct before you upload to Postal One. And if you do have some errors, you need to reconcile those, and you need to stay on top of it. You need to reconcile it as you do it instead of at the last minute, because at the last minute, it may be too late. And, admittedly, this reconciliation process is time consuming, and you may or may not have the resources to do it. And you need tools to make that system faster and easier for whoever's going to do it. So we're jumping on to preparation. We say preparation is the first pillar. So we think that you need a comprehensive editing tool for your eDoc. You need to be able to go in and make changes to mids and crids if they're incorrect. You need to make changes. You need to mark spoilage. You need to identify anything that is wrong in your mail.dat. And there could be a whole host of reasons why it's wrong. It could be miskeying errors. It could be changes in mids at the last minute. It could be a rerun. It could be, a lot of different things. So Leanne, what do you find as one of your keys in preparation?
I actually think it's important to understand the definition of the mail owner as defined by the United States Postal Service, and make sure that we have our mail owners identified properly in the mail.dat. So in an entity, just a regular mailing, air quote regular, you could have a permit holder, a mail owner, and a mailing agent. Sometimes our mail owners may want to work with a partner that provides services such as informed visibility. And in some of those cases, that client would have a legitimate business need to have a mid in their IMBs on piece that doesn't identify them as the mail owner. But we have to be very cautious about leaving an entity like that. We have to leave it in the IMB so that they get what they want for sure. But we can't leave that entity identified as the mail owner, because the mail owner, as defined, controls the content of the mailing, derives the benefit of the mailing, and ultimately pays postage. However, that's worked out between the mail owner and their mail service provider. So that entity wouldn't be the third-party vendor, because that will definitely cause scorecard issues. So having a tool to go in and easily review, oh no, I left the mid as the mail owner of the third party, let me edit that quick, because that error will do damage to a scorecard. So having the ability to know those things and understanding the hierarchy in a mail.dat, having a tool to help do that in a global way, I think is really critically important. I really do.
Bernie, I just wanted to add that I'm just amazed to see how many folks I'm running across who are pre-sorting their jobs because they have small things wrong in the mail.dat that they produced in the pre-sort, like the mailing postage statement, mailing date, the piece weight, permit information, basic stuff, and they're still pre-sorting. So I just think that, we got better things to do, folks. We should be able to just go in and edit it. That's granted, those are smaller, medium-sized mailers, not like the organizations that Leanne and Kurt belong to. But
yes, but even in a smaller place, I've worked at smaller places. In the world of seamless acceptance, pre-sorting a file is much dicier than it might have been in the days before this data-rich environment, right?
Especially if it's in production and you've got barcodes on the pieces already.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the things you have to watch, is that if you do pre-sort a file, that you have to make sure that the barcodes on the piece match the information in the eDoc file that you're uploading to the Postal Service. Otherwise, you end up with things that look to the Postal Service as if they're undocumented mail pieces. Postal Service is comparing the scans of all the pieces, the trays, the pallets as it moves through their system with the eDoc we provide as mail service providers. And when they do that comparison, if they find a mail piece that they can't match back to an EDOC, they're going to log that as undocumented. They're going to flag that on the mailer scorecard. And that's one of the things that service providers have to spend some time doing, is going through the scorecard, looking at their undocumented pieces. Why was this undocumented? Was it a spoiled piece that got reprocessed, ended up with a different barcode on it, and actually it ties back to this EDOC? And if you can explain that to the Postal Service, then they say, okay, we see that you paid for that piece, and then everything is good again. And so you just need to follow that through the process.
And in following up on that, it's very easy to change your serial numbers just by changing the order in which you read in your files.
Right. That a lot of things can cause, the serial numbers to change pretty quickly.
Yeah. So in preparation, we're saying that you need just a comprehensive editor so that you don't have to go in and risk any of these errors by pre-sorting. So here's a sample of a strong editor that allows you to go in and make changes, save it, and then revalidate it to make sure that it's correct. So we suggest that you do have a strong editor that allows you to do that.
And something that's, you have multiple things going on. I've heard a lot of, I guess, confusion at times. What is a by-for error versus what's a mid error, what's a crid error? There is a long list of things. At a high level, you have to make sure that you are identifying the same owner in all files for a version. And second big group in my mind is, hey, are these mids and crids actually even valid? So you need software that should be able to validate both things for you when you want that done, and then be able to edit that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's the presentation of the data to the end user who's trying to make the edits. I think one of the things we're trying to show here is, it's one thing to allow someone to have access to a mail.dat database and to be able to go field by field and make updates. It's another thing to present it in a way like this, where you're seeing the information that you're interested in organized in the way that an end user would, a mailing person, not a database person, would want to see it. So you can see here, there's information presented for the mail owner, the mail preparer, and that kind of thing, so that it's easy to have it all in one place. You can see the segment, MPU, and component data, all in one place, all related to the topic that you're interested in, which is in this case the mail owner and the mail preparer.
Okay. So as we move on, we said you have preparation. The second pillar would be validation. So after you make your changes, we need to validate it. We need to make sure that the information that's in your EDOC is correct before you upload it to Postal One. And you can see on the screen that there's several typical errors: barcode uniqueness, the by-for, which we just spoke of. The EDOC address file consistency is the rerun that Kurt was talking about, where you reran a job. You need to make sure that your data file and your EDOC match up. What if operations gave you one file but not the other? It's going to be out of sync. We also talk about internal validations that Postal One provides, and date validations that Joe brought up before. Your postage statement mailing date is different and things like that. So we think that the validation is really important to validate your work, to make sure that it's correct before you upload it. This way you can avoid just, silly mistakes. And here's a sample screen that shows some basic validations. So you want to make your edits, you want to validate it, you want to upload it. And here's another slide that talks about that same process, where we suggest that you You make your edits, you validate. If you find an error when you validated it, oh, I made a miskey, you fix it, you quickly validate it again, you revalidate it, and then you upload the file into Postal One, and you're going to feel very confident that your file is correct and it's free of errors. So the third phase would be, I guess, reconciliation. And reconciliation is obviously after the fact. You get your scorecard data, you look at your scorecard and you say, there's a few issues. Typically those issues deal around undocumented, but it could be other issues as well. So we need to reconcile our scorecard. And the way you do that is you take your eDoc and you take your address file, and you need to be able to validate that they're correct. And there's a one-to-one relationship there for each of those records. So typically what we see here is kind of a roadmap of, you have the scan data, which is your IV data. You have your undocumented file, which you're going to get from IV. And you probably also, which is not on here, but it's your undocumented log would be a part of that. And then you need a reporting tool. And this reporting tool should be robust enough that it should help you find your undocumented. Whether that record exists, absolutely doesn't exist, or there's a similar match, which at least help me get started to find where that record is. Whether it's in a mailing that's not in the 45-day window for whatever reason that it looped through the system, or it may be associated with another mailing. So we need to have a tool that can do that. So here's a sample of a robust tool that can read in your address file. It could read in the undocumented file from the Postal Service, and it can find, it reads in your eDoc as well, and it can find absolute matches, near matches, and records that don't match at all. And that should be a starting point to help you find your undocumented. And this is where you're going to have, it's time consuming. And if you don't have a tool like this, where do you start? I mean, where do you even begin to look at these files? How do you approach this? You would have to look at serial ranges, and that's just a mess, and it's time consuming. So a tool like this will help you eliminate all of those time factors and kind of help you zero in and get you under threshold, or at least figure out why something is happening.
I mean, I think that the key thing here is, in my mind, there's at least one person under attendees who we worked with for a while, more of a design thinking with a lot of empathy. And she noted a lot of things that are on this solution right now, saying, you know, she used to spend hours figuring out, do I have something similar? So now you have a click to do, you know, a single click that tells you, yeah, there's some similar data out there. Instead of you spending hours figuring out what similar is out there, you have a simple solution available to quickly figure things out instead of spending hours. And I want to thank her. I don't want to name her right now. I'm not sure if she wants me to name her, but things are important where you're working with a team that's listening to you, is trying to understand your pain points and able to respond to your needs. Go ahead.
Bernie, can you define what a near match is?
Near match is any record that's within a serial range that is close enough.
Gotcha. And I
So-
wanted to point out that I think it's really important that a tool like this have the ability to read in the undocumented file from the Postal Service, not just from the scorecard. The data is available on the scorecard, but in the Informed Visibility platform, it's much easier to be able to go and download your undocumented file. And so a tool like this ought to be able to read in data from either source and match it to all the jobs in your database, and not use the 45-day rule, so that you can find records, those records that Bernie mentioned that are could be looping through and might be more than 45 days old. and are sitting there right in your database, and you can easily find them and show the Postal Service that they were documented.
Yeah, and I want to just add one thing we had learned. One of the bigger problems was the address files. Your ability to link your floor, your plant with your eDocs to figure out, what am I finding that happened on the machine that I can also use to figure out, hey, there were changes in my plan. Did I make changes in my eDocs? Are there mismatches from my address file or not? Go ahead, Bernie.
Okay. So just kind of to summarize, we said that there's the three pillars: the prepare, the validate, and the reconcile. And all of these things will help make seamless acceptance appear easier. It'll help you navigate through that whole process, I think, really easy. And it's kind of a win-win. I mean, we talked about the benefits. There's clearly a benefit for the mailer. There's clearly a benefit for the mail owner. And the Postal Service wins as well. And the Postal Service wins because now it's not tied to humans as much as it is tied to data. So it's a winning proposition for everyone, as long as we have all these processes down.
So I wanted to address a few issues. We talked about the idea that it's good for most companies to have some kind of software tools in their shop to be able to help them out with those three pillars. And we talked about functionality, but I also want to talk about some underlying capabilities that if you're looking at software tools that you should be considering. One of the main things is the speed. One of the things we've migrated over the years in mail.dat, where now we're dealing much more often with individual piece data. There's a lot of data out there. We just talked about being able to try to match against a database to find undocumented pieces. It can be a daunting task on a computer. So just when you're looking at tools, look at architecture and make sure to test to make sure that it's going to be able to do it really, really fast. It's one thing to be able to say you can do it. You don't want to have to wait overnight for it to happen. And of course, you want to make sure that whatever tools you're using, they've been tested in production environments, tested hard, so that you know that they're going to work and be reliable, because these are now becoming mission critical applications. You want to make sure that your IT people are looking at the tool as well and understanding and making sure that they're scalable. You want to make sure that they're going to be able to grow with your environment. And if your volume grows, you bring on more data, you need to make sure that the system is going to be able to stick with you. And then this concept of making sure that it's organized as a centralized data management system. That means that it's web-based, so that you have folks maybe in multiple plants, but almost certainly in multiple locations. We have people working out of their homes now. So you want to be able to have a single instance of the software and not be having to go out and install the software separately on a whole bunch of different computers and try to keep them all up to date and in sync with one another. You want to make sure that it's all done from a single centralized location. You can have access to the data across all of your users and all of your plants from a central source.
When you talk about the software being robust, I mean, you think about the record being in the eDoc, it's also in IV, and it may be in the undocumented. So that record could appear 3 times in the file. So you need something that's fast enough to find that record throughout the process.
Some of the things we've seen or heard are challenges with big commingle files. People spending a lot of time trying to work with big commingle files. And so those things are something, whatever tool you're using, make sure you test performance, that's all. Go ahead, Bernie.
So if anybody on the phone feels like they don't have the tools that they need, they might be able to use some additional help. get in touch with us. I'd like to set up a demo and show you this stuff. And we can get your data, send us some mail.dat files. We can go through, you can talk to us about some of the challenges that you're facing, and we can show you whether or not we might be able to help you out. If you like what you see, we do a free 30-day trial. We can get you up to speed quickly. You can run it remotely from our facility if you like, or we can install it on premise and let you trial it on premise. And I can tell you that we'll be there every step of the way to help you. If you want to keep the software, we'll help you move it right into production.
There's a link to the guides on Seamless. I guess I would just open it up if anybody has any questions. I see many experts here, but then I see many names that I'm not familiar with as well. So if any folks have any questions for anybody.
Sharick, it might also be helpful if some of the folks on the call have a perspective on Seamless. Maybe they're in parallel, maybe they have some of their own challenges or benefits they've discovered that they want to share with others. That would be helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you are an attendee, there should be an option for you to raise your hand in the participants list. And if you do that, I can unmute you, and then you will be able to talk to the panelists and everyone would be able to hear you. Somebody want to give that a try and see how raising your hand works?
I think it's post lunchtime. Everybody's sleepy. I know Bob is sleepy right now.
All right, Raffia, how about you? Can you raise your hand just to see if this process is working? Okay, I see it. Wow. Okay, so Raffia, can you hear me? You need to unmute yourself. There you go. Can you hear me?
That might have been a bad choice because I had a hard time I was on a call this morning with Raffia, a Zoom call. We couldn't get her audio working.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Anybody else on the call that would like to give this a try? I did see Raffia was able to raise her hand and I was able to unmute her, but apparently we're not able to hear her.
Yeah, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay. All right. So we know the process works. Anyone else? Anyone else have a question for the panelist or some information or perspective you'd like to share with others on the call?
Bob Rosser wants to talk.
All right, Bob, I saw that.
I made a mistake. I said Bob is sleeping, but I know he wasn't sleeping. So let him talk.
Okay, Bob, you're muted on your end.
You need to unmute Bob. Can you unmute him? Rex?
Let's see. There we go. Yeah, I can do it here. It says I got to.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for the webinar. I guess one of the questions that I have is how do you, Joe, see the tools that you guys are have created helping seamless mailers when Postal One is down and you have to operate in contingency modes, you know, for e-induction and everything else?
I'm not really familiar with how that's working today. You know, I have to say that I've been out of touch here for a couple of years and I'm a little rusty on that. So maybe, can anybody else step in and chime in on how they deal with that?
I mean, the idea would be to be able to generate paper process to continue the process. So you have your paper, I guess, as far as postage and as far as your entry forms are concerned, you should be able to print those when it's down, and when it's back up, hopefully your data will be back. Did I answer your question, Bob?
Yeah, I think you did, Sherick. I think one of the advantages I see that you guys are talking about is, being able to perhaps supply the fast help desk with all the 99Ms that potentially might be hitting while either your system's down or Postal One's down. As a mailer who's a seamless mailer, I know that has happened to us over the years. And, it usually requires a lot of, hands-on coordination just to make sure that everything works properly.
Yeah, I think the shipment Assurety module we have, which is the oldest one, I guess 16 years old, provides third-party support and other stuff, but it has reports that you can generate for your pallets, or if you hired somebody else where your trays are on those pallets or where your pieces are on somebody else's trays. We have what is called partner query that can go to the FAST system, find out your pallet barcode data, and then you can print those reports as far as when Postal One or FAST is down in that scenario.
Thanks.
Other questions?
I think it's good we are getting done early. We can give folks their afternoon back if there are no other questions. And I want to just say thanks to everyone who joined. I think we were a bit, we invited folks maybe a week before. Next time we'll do a better job to give more ample time, 3-4 weeks to find out about the webinars. We do plan to do one on tracking next one. Hopefully you will join. You can see all the bells and whistles around data analytics, around operational dashboards, analytics dashboards, as well as tracking and informed delivery. So
Ernie, you have a slide, my contact information you could put up there for a minute? Here we go.
And we will be sending out a recording to everybody who joined.
And we can include a link to the presentation that you just saw as well.
Right.
All right, thank you, everyone. This will conclude the webinar for today. Stay tuned for the next one.
Have a great afternoon, guys. Thank you.
All right, thanks again.
Thanks, Sherick.
Thanks.